Hello YouTubians. So here I have video 2 about the Blue Jackets manual. Video 2. So I'm going to read the acknowledgement sections. I'm the typical person. I get a book and I don't or I'm sorry, not the acknowledgements, the preface. I'm the typical person. I buy a book and I don't read the preface and the foreword and the acknowledgements, things like that. I want to get to the meat of the matter. But this is, I'm doing this because this is kind of important. So this will be installment 2 on the Blue Jackets manual. Preface. So in 1902, Lieutenant Ridley McLean, recognizing that young men entering the Navy had no source of information to introduce them to their new profession, wrote what has become an American institution, the Blue Jackets Manual. Lieutenant McLean probably had no idea that his creation would endure for an entire century, evolving through more than 20 revisions to keep up with the sweeping changes that have transformed the U.S. Navy from a fledgling sea power to master of the world's oceans. Although the technology has changed, new terms have been added to the strange lexicon of the sea, and the American Blue Jacket is a very different sort from those who joined the Navy in Ridley McLean's day. The need for an introductory text and lasting reference has not diminished. This centennial edition, like its predecessors, makes no attempt to be a comprehensive textbook on all things Navy. To do so today would require a multi-volume set that would defy practicality. And that is so true. In my profession in the Navy, I was a parachute rigger. We had the NavAir 13 series manuals that each manual was, hundreds of pages thick, and there was like 9 volumes or something like that. So you're talking thousands of pages just surrounding my job, okay? And imagine taking any job and condensing it down to manuals. And those manuals by no means told you the ins and outs and the small things to do. It told you basically how to do specific tasks. They're very technical manuals. They're called technical manuals. And as you go through life, you learn that there is more to life than just the technicality of doing a job. You have to learn to treat people nicely. You have to learn how to wheel and deal with other people, taking into factor their feelings and what kind of day they're having and what's going on in the Navy. If you want a parachute packed and you need it by tomorrow so you can fly a specific airplane that the maintenance chief says, hey, we got to fly this airplane tomorrow. Marler, where's that parachute at? You better learn how to sweet talk the guys at the Paraloft to get your parachute bumped to the front of the line, okay? And sometimes you got to make some wheels and deals to get that done. So when I worked in the Paraloft and I ran a Paraloft, I didn't like wheeling and dealing. I understood people's plights. They go, hey, Kurt, man, this shoot needs to be done by tomorrow. The chief's on my butt. I'd be like, okay, that's a good enough reason. But they better have a good reason, and that's part of dealing with people, both in civilian life and military life. You better have a good reason for why you want them to jump through some hoop for you. But it is a Navy primer that will help the new recruit make the transition from civilian to sailor and serve as a handy reference for years to come. Those who've not joined the Navy but who wish to better understand it would do well to read this explanatory book. Among the changes to the 23rd edition is an added chapter on naval missions and heritage, expansion of the chapter on Navy education and training to include the Navy College program and other improvements, enhancement treatment of physical fitness, the latest changes to the Navy's rating systems, and added information on threat conditions, fraternization, because now there's women in the Navy, gentlemen, let's act like gentlemen, hazing, not allowed, standards of conduct for government employees, and knowledge factors as mandated by the Navy's NAVSTDS system. Of course, a great deal of information was updated to keep up with the ever-evolving nature of the U.S. Navy. There are a lot of women in the Navy. Now women and men go together on the ships, and you better get used to it, and you better have the right ideas going into it, and you better treat women like sailors and vice versa, okay? Fraternization will happen. I've known people that decided to get married, and both of them got out of the Navy because there was no fraternization allowed. Because it is designed for the neophyte, every attempt has been made to explain all the terms that are used. That's funny because they didn't explain the nav STDS system. Neophyte means the new person. Every attempt has been made to explain all new terms as they are used. The seasoned sailor may cringe a bit when he or she encounters civilian terms used to explain the nautical ones. A deck described as similar to a floor, for example, but it should be apparent that a familiar analogy is an expeditious means of teaching new terms and concepts. For the reader who is not reading this book from cover to cover, the glossary will serve as a quick reference for finding the meanings of words that were defined earlier in the book. In this rapidly changing world, it is vital that information be kept as accurate as possible. This latest edition represents a significant rewrite on those parts requiring it, but those areas deemed still valid have been preserved or only slightly modified. Because the Blue Jackets Manual is updated with each printing, and because it is in the best interest of all concerned that this manual be kept up to date, readers are invited to submit recommended changes by writing to the author, care of the Naval Institute, 291 Wood Road, Annapolis, Maryland, 21402, or by email at tcutler@navalinstitute.org. And Thomas Cutler is the author of this. Older readers may note that the title of the book has been slightly modified by moving the apostrophe in Blue Jackets from the plural possessive to the singular possessive, i.e. Blue Jackets position. This change was made because the original 1902 edition was entitled The Blue Jackets Manual. For reasons unknown today, the title was changed sometime after the First World War and remained that way for many decades. A return to the original makes sense not only for the traditional reasons, but because singular possessive is more appropriate to the personal nature of this book. Throughout the book, the current author, a former sailor himself, has chosen to speak directly to the sailor who will be reading it instead of using the less personal third person. Amen to that. I applaud that decision. Ridley McLean is no longer the author of this book, and much of what is presented in this 100th anniversary edition would be wholly unfamiliar to him, but it is a testimony to the Navy's heritage and its traditions that he would be fully comfortable with many of the terms, customs, and ceremonies that have endured for a century. The Blue Jackets Manual has played an important role in the preservation of our naval heritage and will continue to do so in the next millennium. So yes, Ridley McLean is not the author, Thomas Cutler is, and notice the apostrophe was originally put there when the manual began, and then it was moved to the end to make it kind of a third person thing, and now it's been moved back there because they're speaking directly to you, a singular person. And imagine being poor Thomas Cutler, who's responsible for reading through this entire manual and deciding what changes need to be made, getting approval from the Naval Command, and rewriting this. But chocked full of good information. So, thank you for watching episode 2. Have a wonderful day. And don't forget, keep them happy.